Well, the concept of planetary boundaries is a scientific concept which is trying to define, I think, about 9 planetary boundaries that would say like ecological tipping points that have very important impacts at the global level, and trying to show as well the interdependencies of these different tipping points.
It's about global sustainability fundamentally. A group of scientists who'd been working on a whole range of separate issues realized that we now have 40 years or so of really deep understanding of environmental change and the working of the planetary ecosystem. And we just need to recognize that our efforts at sustainability, our human activities, need to exist within that framework of the planetary ecosystem.
In Rio in '92, there have been decisions on 3 international conventions: Biodiversity Convention, Climate Change, and land degradation. Furthermore, the Montreal Protocol was decided, so they have been taking up already 3 of the thresholds proposed by the scientific concept, more or less in the same form they do approach them. Related to implementation, for example, GIZ is working on quite a number of these issues. Climate change is a very important and growing issue in development cooperation. And many projects try to link different impacts, and this is exactly the systemic approach that I like from the scientific concept. For example, the topic of forests is combining climate change, is combining biodiversity, and you can combine it with poverty reduction approaches as well. So sustainable forest management might be an example that is like linked to the planetary boundary concept.
We all know that many of our current pathways are unsustainable already, and so providing a way of holding these various dimensions of unsustainability together has been really powerful and very important, and it's causing a lot of political debate. We have some examples in practice of how we would translate that. So for instance, in Sweden, the government has tried to look at the question of national responsibility for the contribution to these different issues. In South Africa, there are people trying to understand what national boundaries might look at. The challenge is enormous. One of the things is we already know that these are serious problems. It's not a brand new piece of information for the world, and these are problems that have been difficult before. What we're trying to do is really emphasize that they're now becoming urgent. So one of the first challenges is simply the urgency. When we see these processes happening together, we know they interact and they can cause cascading effects. It should push for more focused and quicker responses. But again, the same problems of dealing with local unsustainability play out much more complicated ways when we deal with global sustainability. So the other challenges are about fair treatment and equity as we deal internationally.
I think I mentioned already, planetary boundary concept has not been taken up into any political process so far. But the German government, for example, published its first position on the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goal process, which is one building block to the post-2015 agenda, which is negotiated right now. And they've stated that the set of goals, and this would be universal goals, different to the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, will be, should be people-centered and planet-sensitive. So there's a real link, although the concept, what is planet sensitive, I think it's still open and needs to define further with targets and indicators. I think the biggest challenge here is to get it in an integrated manner and not to overrule or undermine the ongoing conventions on one hand, but really to get an integrated approach and to put it on a new set of universal goals that would address developing countries as well as industrialized countries, so very different circumstances somehow.